Kia ora tātou and welcome to our two new members. I've got 10 minutes, I think, and I need to get down to Lambton Quay to another stand-up meeting a bit like this with ELT. And that's a bit of a feature of my working week at the moment. We have 3 stand-ups during the week with the whole ELT to figure out what's going on with new government. And that's not a negative comment, it's just that we've got 8 ministers, and including the Minister for DIA, Minister Martin, and we're trying to get to grips with what their priorities are and how we can support their policies and their term of government for the next 3 years. Minister Martin's proven to be quite an engaging sort of person, and we've had 3 or 4 meetings with her now. As of today, she hasn't given us any indication of her policy settings or the government's policy settings for National Library or for archives. And that's in relation to what was in the Labour Party manifesto for the election of proposing to separate these 2 institutions away from DIA back to 2010 scenario. So we know nothing. And the Minister, I think, is at a point where she needs to start thinking and will engage with us. We provided her with quite a substantial briefing last week on National Library and Archives, on who we are, what we do, what our strategies are for the future with 2057 for archives and 2030 for National Library. So we provided the information for a really good conversation with her, and I'm sure we'll have that in the next couple of weeks. But right now there's no news, there's no indication of any policy from government about separation from DIA. So we just sit and wait, and when we get to have the conversation we might learn something else, something more. So you know, we can still think about it, what it might look like. Just as a reference, if it does happen, and you know, who knows, I've got no sense of probabilities, but when Civil Defence left DIA in 2013, I led that project, and that took about 8 months to move 45 staff to DPMC. So if it is a policy of the government, and we don't know, then I'm sure it will be something that will take a reasonable amount of time to execute in a professional way and one that ensures long-term sustainability of 2 separate institutions. But that's just a what if. There's no news on that front, so we just have to sit back, good public servants, and wait till we engage on those policy discussions. The question of Richard's tenure as Chief Archivist might be on your minds as well. I'm delighted that Richard is the Acting Chief Archivist through this period, and I'm not going to do anything about recruiting a permanent until we do know for sure what the government's intentions are around Archives New Zealand. It would be pretty unfortunate if I commenced a recruitment process only to find out that middle of next year some decisions may be made which would make that a redundant process. So I'm going to wait. I'll wait until we know for sure what the future next couple of years holds, and then I'll commence a fully fully independent, externally advertised recruitment process to ensure that we have the best possible leadership for archives, both from a system level perspective and for the organisation. So Richard, you can hang in there with as much uncertainty as we've got, but as soon as we do get a chance of understanding the future directions, we'll talk to you about that. Preserving Nations Memory work is pretty active right now, and we're gearing up to engage with ministers over the next couple of months around the options around investment to really significantly upgrade this facility and create more space for the archives and for some National Library stored items as well throughout the North Island. It's in the government budget process. Can't say too much about it. There's a whole range of options that we're exploring, and we'll be having those discussions with ministers at the first opportunity. That's likely to commence towards the end of January when we put up our budget advice to ministers for this quite essential upgrade. But as I said, there are options we need to work through very thoroughly. Really happy to take any questions that you might be top of mind that I haven't covered. Sure.
I was just wondering how conversations have gone with the department about enforcing 3 extra days. It was given to presented to us as an opportunity for extended rest and relaxation.
Yep.
It has inconvenienced some people who have been keeping their leave balances low as requested by their managers. What sort of conversations have been happening over the past department? Because I noticed that our colleagues in the Charities Commission, Township and other places within DI aren't also being forced to get this recently relaxation?
It was very much a Wellington decision. It emanated from the closure of 147 Lambton Quay. So December 22 is the last day that that facility will be open to staff, and it'll be vacated over the Christmas New Year period as we look to migrate all those staff into the 45 Pipitea Street building, which will be the new home for quite a number of Wellington-based staff. And that'll be filled up over a 2 to 3 week period as people return from leave, different waves of moves of staff. So it was decided that it would be best to look for that really solid 2 week period to make sure that we were ready in Pipitea Street for those transfers of staff. Also looking at our own branch, we thought, well, we should follow suit because it's been a pretty active year, and we do know that staff do enjoy holiday breaks, and on average most staff have quite reasonable leave balances, and to take a 2 week spell off with only requiring 3 days annual leave we thought was a good thing to consider. So I signed up our branch, and there are different requirements across our businesses. For example, He Tohu, that will remain open on reduced hours over the days between just after Boxing Day through to the 8th of January, because it's a public service. Same with citizenships, passports, they offer public services. I'm not sure about charities, I just don't know, I haven't heard anything about charities. But there is discretion for managers, and if staff have got low leave balances, we're not going to get too precise about this, but it's a matter of having that conversation with your manager and just talking through your individual situations. So it's a request. We'd like to get as many people having that spell away from the office, but it's not going to be enforced to the last person.
We've got the Minister coming to visit us on Monday.
Yes, we have.
That's not state secret.
No, it's not a secret. Minister's accepted an invitation to come and visit He Tohu, and we're very keen to get her through and experience the fabulous exhibition. So 8:30 on Monday she'll join us to get the guided tour. We have got aspirations to get every Cabinet Minister through as soon as we can, but we felt getting Minister Martin through first up would be very beneficial for her and for us. So we'll be leading that, and the great Steph Lash will be coming in to lead the discussions around the contents of that exhibition. At the same time, she'll be filming a new video which is used for national ceremonies for citizenship. So the Minister of Internal Affairs always does a video welcome to new citizens New Zealand. So after the tour, she'll be doing that video of the welcome to New Zealand with He Tohu as the backdrop, and I think it's a great advert for the fabulous exhibition. I'm not sure how many people have been through it as of today, but I know as of 6 month point, 24,000 New Zealanders have been through, and that's a really significant number of people who have had that experience of getting close to the documents and learning a bit more about the documents, about what it means to be New Zealanders. I'm sure we're well past 25,000. We're averaging about 800 people a week through the exhibition, so it's going extremely well. We just got a further award in the last week for lighting, and I know the Conservatives had a hand in that, working with our experts, and the great pun about from the awards was about simply brilliant. And I thought that was a really great way to describe the very low wattage lighting that's been achieved to enable better access to the actual physical documents. Any other questions?
Yeah. In terms of the gateway use for SDO, are we going to be involved in sort of any discussions around it? Because I guess there are some concerns in terms of extra traffic into the building and making sure it's all harmonious for how people arrive.
Yeah.
Perhaps not approach reception.
Yeah.
Are we going to be involved in those discussions?
There's no reason not to. In fact, I'd welcome your input. I think that you could make direct contact with, what's the project manager? Can't remember her name offhand, but no, I think we should definitely put our face there and put our good thoughts forward. It's I think a great compromise for the department that we can free up that space and free up the space from the ground floor of the National Library. Those 2 meeting rooms will return to operation, and they've been sorely missed for users across all of DIA and the National Library. So utilise that other space, which has had a number of tenants over the last few years. National Library was there when I joined back in 2011. Then we had the translation service. We've had He Tohu team, and now the Passports Office for a couple of years. One of the challenges for the Passport Office and Public Counter is just knowing how big a facility we need into the medium to long term. As the SDO branch progresses with their new big program of systems development and digital service delivery, we're expecting a much higher uptake digitally of those online services. So the traffic flows will diminish, but we just can't predict right now accurately how many it will be. When we did the sums for the National Library potential location, it looked like about 2,000 people a month were using public counters. 6,000 people a month were using the network space, which was the part of the proposed area. So we felt that the metrics just didn't justify upsetting the network space, so we looked for a lower impact solution. And we predict those 2,000 a month will drop quite significantly over the next 2 to 3 years. So it gives the SDO some breathing space as far as longer term solutions for a public counter. It also fits pretty neatly with the likely scenario for major upgrading to this building, which hopefully will commence around 2020. One final question? Right, I'll leave you in the capable hands of who's next. Luke, right. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I still need paper for this. So, morena koutou katoa, no kotarania oku tupuna, ko Philip Lane te kaipuki, no Ngāti Tiriti te iwi. E whānau mai I mawhera, ke Aotearoa nei, no taku whānau, ke paparangi toku kainga nai nei, ko Luke Ingalls toko ingoa. So I'm just here to give you a quick update on what operational support's been doing in regards to Te Aka Te Whenua. I think it goes without saying that the treaty is very important to what we do in our everyday business. Zero goes there. And as public servants, being if we're born in New Zealand or if we're doing it coming over from overseas and interacting with the culture. In op supports, we've been growing our Ke Te O Te Wānanga, our basket of knowledge, and we're doing this so we can be competent and confident in how we engage with the archives. As you may notice, we're not always confident and there's a bit of fear about it, and then we are doing our best to work through this and realise what we can do. We engage with taonga every day, so application of tikanga is essential in that we realise that taonga doesn't just relate to the artefacts that we hold, but it's also about the people that we interact with. What this means in a practical sense is that applying the principles of Te Aka Te Whenua is something that we need to actively engage with. And we do that by just having conversations and engaging not only with our customers but with our colleagues. So using Te Aka Poltama, we can measure our successes and set our milestones so we know where we're going and where we've come from. A number of us have already partaken in the Hei Timatanga course, which gave us a foundation of Te Reo basics. And then Danielle, Rosa and myself have started to doing the Wananga Aotearoa Hei Papatinga course, which takes a more in-depth approach to aspects of Te Ao Māori, which has been growing our knowledge. And for me, the important part about tikanga has been less about looking at Te Aka Te Whenua as something that we conform to, and it's now something that I can use as a practical lens, that it changes the way I look, how I deal with archives, and how I engage with the public. I think Ruru experience that many of us here have shared have been involved with He Tohu, like nearly half of the ASAs were crate carriers and everyone else has supported us. And it was an experience that enforced the value of the treaty both as a heritage document, but also as something that's a living touchstone that people engage with in their past and their present and moving on to the future. And the weeks leading up also highlighted a few areas where we were found wanting, that there was ignorance about how we do things. And then I think that really sparked a desire in our team about how we want to know more and to be better. And so we acknowledge we're on the start of our journey and we will get better over time, and we're enjoying the opportunities that archives gives to us. I'd also like to really acknowledge the Māori here at Archives who have been free with their time. They've always had an open door to me when I need clarification or assurance on what I'm doing is saying is right or proper. And my Macron use has been refined along the way. So I just wanted to close with the whakatauki. He umauma tangata, he umauma wakau. So a human breast, a wooden breast, and that can be taken to mean that with the courage of our team and the strength of our pa, that we can be invincible.
Morning everyone, and I know what you're thinking, holy crap, he's wearing a tie. Please don't try and undo it, because I don't think I'll be able to do it back up. Now, I'm here just to give a brief overview of what we do in a day, and after thinking about it a little bit, what we do in a day probably actually goes over 2 days, in that sense that a lot of the things that we do can be wrapped up in a 48 hours. It just goes a bit longer than that, that's all. Now, the first thing we would do would be retrieval. Day starts at approximately between 7 and 8 a.m. in the morning, and that encompasses retrieving files that have come overnight up until approximately 10:30. So retrieval shift lasts about 2 hours. Orders come out in the ALF computer just upstairs, or they might be come through a manual system here with our Help at Research Services. And what happens there is that they then go down into the stacks, well, we go down into the stacks and retrieve files. We have an hour turnaround, give or take, and after that, about five items, give or take. So the numbers can vary, but they generally stick to roughly, depending on the batch itself, similar numbers throughout the day. What we would do following that would be reshelving. Now again, it's pretty much the opposite of retrieval. Every level has approximately 1 to 2 trolleys full of files that we've retrieved and viewed the day before, give or take. We then spend the next 2.5 hours, sometimes up to 3 hours returning those. I think yesterday or the day before we had approximately 3 trolleys on one level, so that's it's a bit more than what we might be used to. But again, about 2.5 to 3 hours tops. And unfortunately with that, there's no limit to what might be on the trolley, so it can be a very short shift or it can be a very long shift, depending on. Government loans is probably the thing that would take up the last section of the day, and that's simple retrievals again, but they are sent off-site to other government departments. Sometimes we do then some digitised for government loans, a lot of liaison with research services. We also, during that time, liaise with Family Search, and we retrieve search items for them, containers, and about once every 2 to 3 days we top them up with more containers, about 6 to 8 at a time, give or take. The following day, again, that would probably what I just discussed would be roughly to take up an entire day. And then following for that the next day, the first thing somebody might do, or bear in mind these do not all go within the order of what I've said them, would probably be desk. Desk is a 2-hour shift. We'll be just behind here, and it's very, very customer focused. Unfortunately, there isn't much we can do in the sense of knowledge. That's why we have our best friends at our research services. And I imagine I get the feeling that a lot of times they probably hear, just coming from the corner, oh, we can't actually answer that, you should probably speak to the archivists. It's about a 2-hour shift, give or take, and we also take copying orders. We also run audits on reports on things that we have held out for X amount of time, just to make sure that they can be available to other people, that they haven't been sitting there for too long, basically. And also reorganisation. There's approximately, I'd say, 15 trolleys back there, and it can get a bit messy. So part of our day would definitely be spent reorganising that, so it's a bit more accessible to other people as well. Scanning. That's one of the big focuses we've taken up in the past year especially. We work, I'll say we work side by side with the scanning team, but we don't really have much interaction as such. It's literally side by side, same desks kind of thing. And what that is it's part of the larger project where we want to digitise basically everything in the entire building. It's very, very simple. It's editing and scanning and not much else. So it's one of the longer things we do, but definitely one of the more, I don't want to say simple, but definitely one of the more detail-oriented and focused. It's about 2 to 4 hours, depending on what you might have through the day, but for the most part, it sits at about the 3-hour mark. And timekeeping and standardisation is very important with that. It's going forward, these are records that we are going to present to the public as being digital copies of the exact, so we want to make sure that we have them as we find them, pretty much. The last thing we might have for the day, again, this is the end of the day, second day, repository maintenance. Now that's a very, very broad term. It covers many things. Most obviously, general maintenance of the repository or the stacks. What we do also is transfers. So when a transfer comes in, we'll reorganise shelves, barcodes, scanning. It is a, I don't want to say it's a simple process because it actually can be quite complicated, especially using that barcoding machine. But sometimes the job itself, again, it's the kind of thing that could be a half-an-hour job if you have a small transfer, but could be a bit longer if you have a larger transfer. This is also the time we use for personal development. Anything we have projects going forward, anything we want to improve ourselves upon is another time that this could be used to get that done. We also process bulk orders during that. We work closely with closely with research services, and they sometimes have groups coming in. Recently we've had, I think it was approximately, 300 odd containers, give or take? Give or take, for one particular group, and that doesn't necessarily fit into the normal retrieval time, so we just make sure that we have the repository maintenance time to make sure we have those bulk orders. And any outstanding miscellaneous issues, I mean, things come up all the time, and I know that the second I sit down, some of my team will be like, you didn't talk about this, or you didn't talk about that. That's generally what happens during this repository maintenance. It's just a way that we can make sure we have everything just pretty much covered, any outstanding issues, as it were. Now at this point, I want to say a big thank you to Research Services. We couldn't do anything without those guys. We really couldn't. I mean, if we look at it in terms of building, we on the other hand would be the builders, but the Research Services guys would be the architects or the engineers. That's not to say that we don't do the hard work, but at the same time, we couldn't do a fraction of what we do without Research Services. So thank you very much for that, guys. Appreciate that. Now, I myself, I enjoy being an ASA. It's a very, very diverse role. Sometimes you're sitting down for a long time. Sometimes you're on your feet for a long time. We work with lots of various teams. So I think as a starting position here, being an ASA is really good because it gives you a broad overview of what everyone does, gives you just an idea of certain places you may want to go. And also we find that going forward, previous ASAs that I've talked to, certain things that they come and ask us about, they already have a bit of knowledge of. And well, that really helps because we have a saying in upstairs, and that's once you're an ASA, it's ASA for life.
Thanks, Michael. That was really great. I'm back again to talk to you about Pāpaka. Just because last time we went over it, I felt like maybe you needed a bit more info about what Pāpaka does as an organisation, so we'll crack into that. Thanks, Catherine. So, as we said before, Pāpaka is a Pacific regional branch of the International Council on Archives, one of 13 branches worldwide, and our purpose is to carry out the aims and objectives of the International Council on Archives in the Pacific. So the ICA is dedicated to uniting archival institutions and practitioners across the globe to advocate for good archival management and the physical protection of the world's recorded heritage, which is quite a broad, well, I don't know, it's quite a bold statement, I think. 1,400 members across nearly 200 countries, funded by the membership, and operates through the activities of members. Thank you. These are the 13 regional branches. They all have really fun acronyms. Pāpaka, Wābaka, Sanabaka. There's us all the way over there. Thank you. So Pāpaka was established in 1981 in Fiji. There are about 60 members from individuals and organisations from over 20 nation states and territories, the largest and most diverse geographical area and the most active and successful. So this is just a little overview of the 20 nations and territories who are members. Some of these places I hadn't heard of until last year, Wallis and Futuna. Anyone? Palau, this is where we're probably going in 2019. You have to go through Australia and then to Korea, and then you have to, yeah. It's going to be expensive, start saving.
Start saving.
Cool. So Pābaka aims to share information about archives and records management throughout the Pacific. We provide networking for Pacific archivists, encourage formal and informal training, promote awareness of good records management practices in government, and support archival activities. So we also hold conferences every 2 years. So we recently went to Fiji, but before that people have been to Tonga, Tuvalu, Solomon Islands. They've also been to Africa to provide training to the African version of Pābaka, which I can't remember their name. We run a website, we run a listserv, we publish an annual magazine called Panorama, which shares stories from across the Pacific and all the good work that Pābaka does. And Pābaka has also promoted the passage of archives legislation in countries, states and territories in the Pacific through training at conferences and by making existing statutes available to other members, which is really important work. Archives New Zealand's got a pretty long history with Pābaka. Here I am wearing the same frock. So this Tale, I don't know who's in this picture. Oh, you might remember Anna Gold-Branson. She worked here for a while. I think she's at MPI now. Tale again, Mark in the Hat, Steph and Anna and others. Low sort of male turnout to Pābaka maybe. Anyone want to come and hang out? So archiving in the Pacific is it's interesting. I think we complain about our building, but we're not in a shack in a paddock, so we're doing pretty well. This is the Tuvalu National Library and Archives. That you can't read it, but the sign says please take off your flip-flops. Just to keep dirt levels down, which is pretty interesting. Thank you. So Pābaka is run by a bureau, and I am a bureau member as Secretary General. So we have Opeta Alafao from Fiji as the President, Amala Salipa from Samoa, is the Vice President, myself from New Zealand. The Treasurer is David Swift, he works at National Archives Australia in Sydney. And then we have Margaret Eneferi, Augustine Tevamule and Noah Pichueli Tapumanaya, and Fiona Gunn from National Archives Australia in Canberra, and the lovely Catherine as well. Some of you might have met Opeta before. He's the tall chap standing next to me. He's come to talk to us about the social media and the outreach work that National Archives Fiji do, which is pretty awesome. And he's currently in Mexico at the ICA representing us. So part of the work that we're doing for the next term is encompassed in our business plan. So we wrote this at the conference in Fiji, and we've got 4 key areas: record keeping for good governance toolkit, archival capability, cooperation and advocacy, and then all the rest of the stuff is bundled under business as usual. Thank you. So some of our key pieces of work this term are developing module criteria for critical heritage records, disaster preparedness, response and recovery, and vital records, so business records. Thank you. We also host conferences, so these are a really good opportunity, or organised conferences, sorry, a really good opportunity for the host country to profile themselves and share their knowledge and expertise with others from around the place. And as we saw when we went to Fiji, it was just such a fun time and such a warm and friendly reception. If we ever hosted it, I'd hope we would return that level of hospitality. It was outstanding. Thank you. I've been here a couple times. The Pābaka 18 probably will be in Palau, which will be pretty cool. Apparently they have really good diving there. I don't like going under the water, but...
So the numbers don't represent the year?
No,
Okay.
yeah, so it's just the 18th conference. Yeah, it is a bit confusing. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's like,
Yeah, that's just a coincidence. Thank you. So the Good Governance Toolkit is one of the major parts of Pābaka's work. So at the 11th conference, Pābaka acknowledged poor state of record keeping throughout the Pacific and resolved the need for a toolkit to help Pacific record keepers lift their standards. And it was funded by AusAid and NZAid and supported mostly by National Archives of Australia and Archives New Zealand here. Thank you. And this is one of the key statements that sort of underpins the development of the toolkit. Archives and records are fundamental to democracy, accountability and good governance. So there are 19 guidelines in the toolkit, which is pretty big. You can get a brochure which just gives you a brief overview. There's an introduction guideline and then all the guidelines underneath that covering various aspects of record keeping. The latest phase is that's incorrect. The latest phase dealt with managing digital records, but we are now currently working on, next slide, yes. With the support of the Program Commission of ICA, we've been drafting 4 new guidelines, so disaster preparedness, response and recovery, and vital records. And if you go to the next one, here's us discussing the drafting. Part of the disaster guidelines is the risk evaluation and planning checklist, which will be a separate document but speaks to all 3 disaster guidelines. Thank you. And what I'm really here to do is ask for peer reviewers for these guidelines. If you want to contribute to Pābaka in any way, then this is a really good opportunity. We're looking for peer reviewers to check the tone of the documents. They're sort of coming from like a record keeping aspect, coming from a heritage view, coming from, any perspective you give is going to be good. And I promise not to pile you up like this guy. They're really brief. They need to be simple and easy to understand. And even if you know nothing about record keeping or archives, that's a good perspective too, because we want people to be able to pick them up and read them, understand them, get on with the work. So if you're interested, please come and see me. And our next toolkit module is about assessing significance of your archival holdings. So, and that's related to disaster recovery too. So in a disaster, which holdings do you evacuate first or protect first, which is kind of scary thought, but it's important work for our Pacific colleagues. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Are all the things produced, are they all in English? Or are they
Yes,
in
English and French. Yeah.
I started receiving emails from ICA and some of them come in French and I was like,
Oh.
wasn't too sure what was expected.
Oh, and we've lost Leonor.
but for Pābaka, we don't translate stuff into other Pacific Island languages and all?
We don't really have the resource, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can read French if you need things read. All right. Any other questions? No? Thank you.
Something magical will happen in a moment. Oh, there we go. Played it. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like this usually works. Oh, there we go. It always works. Right, stand here, now on the screen. So thanks everyone. I thought I would take the opportunity to talk a little about the trip that myself, Denise, let's make sure I remember everyone else, Mark Crookston, Peter Whitehead, and Peter Murray we took last week to Canberra and Sydney. We were away for 3 days. I don't know if anyone noticed we weren't here in the office. We'd probably like to think, oh yeah, you noticed, but it's okay if you didn't. But we went to a couple of different places. We went to the National Archives of Australia in Canberra first, on the very first day, which was a very early start, sort of 4:30 sort of wake up and then get to the airport and travel. Now, it's really great that they now have direct flights to Canberra, because we took the flight to Sydney and then Sydney to Canberra, so it was a very long day. But we went to National Archives of Australia the first day, then the next day we flew to Sydney to go to the University of Technology in Sydney. We'll see some stuff there, and then stayed overnight in Sydney, and then went out to State Records Authority of New South Wales and State Archive, and then back to National Archives Australia, their Chester Hill facility. So I'm going to show you some photos, because that's I'm literally the Chinese person that takes a lot of photos on trips. I'm always doing this. I'm always asking, is it okay? There we go, it's not so bright, let's brighten up. So this is a picture inside the brand new, it was only opened this year, is that right, Denise? And Denise went to the opening, I think, or very, very soon after it opened in May of this year. And it's only sort of second level, and it's a 3-level building looking out into the car park. This little gap is actually between their repository and their office space. So it's kind of like 2 separate buildings that are kind of joined in the middle. And it's kind of interesting, they call that big kind of cavernous interior, they call that Archives Row. And it, hate to say it, not to be impolite, but it kind of feels like you're in a correctional facility, like walking down. And that whole idea actually of correctional facilities, of criminality, that comes up in this talk a little bit, and it's not just because of Australians, and it was just by pure luck. I think the repository's on the ceramic tile side, and the offices are on this side here, and this is looking out towards the front. They have no public spaces in this building. It's not for reading. It's out in the kind of burbs of Canberra. If you look in the other direction, this is looking down out towards the back of their property, and this is just the space that the nice corridor you walk through, and lots of ducting and things between plant on one side and the repository on the other side. It always takes photo of shelves, lots of photo shelves. So actually a lot of these are empty. They're not completely full, though they don't have a huge amount of spare capacity from what I understand. They're going to move a lot of things still from the old facility here. This is a picture of some special racking they have just for artwork, so it's actually a lot like what you'd see at the National Library, and some of the people from National Archives just showing us through. There is some really fascinating stuff down below, or actually it's up above, because their repository's multi-storey, all above ground, and they have this ducting, so it's made of fabric, and air goes through the ducting, and then throughout the ducting there's little holes where the air comes through, and that's spread around the building. So you kind of get a lot more evenness in terms of the climate control around the building. And also, if the air pressure goes away, these things just collapse. They won't hurt people if they fall down, which is pretty interesting. Just boxes. I love boxes. Their boxes are different than our boxes. I meant to ask someone about this. Is this some special international standard? Why are their boxes smaller than our boxes? Their boxes look, just different. So I mean, someone will tell that to me at some point. I'm very interested why they chose their box size, why we have our box size, and what the benefits and value of different box sizes are. This is in the cold store. This was probably one of the stores where they said, oh, you're going to smell a little bit of the vinegar syndrome. They don't know what vinegar syndrome smells like. It's like, nah, I can smell a little bit, but no worse than my pantry at home. But they'll say, oh, yeah, it used to be a bit, this is pretty bad. It's like, you don't know it. So, when we saw some pictures of, from Lily before, of the archives and library in some of the Pacific Islands, and how, that they're not like our ones. It's all relative. I think that's what I got from this trip, is until I saw facilities like this, I thought what we had was pretty good, and you're kind of thankful for what you have, especially when you see what other nations have. But it only takes one trip to, and I don't mean literally trip, but one trip to see other facilities and go, oh, there can be a better world. And maybe our people and our archives and our records deserve better care. So it's not just for the records and archives, it's for people as well. So this is one of the conservation rooms, and I was like, wow, this is like amazing. It's all kind of brand new, of course, but this is better than my garage, where they've got all the stuff set out and little tools. It was like a little kitchen area just for dealing with liquids and things. This is amazing. It is literally the size of this desk. And it's like I could lie down there and have a bath. It looks a little bit like a morgue in a way, but I understand it's for washing, stuff, papers, stuff, and soaking things and getting stuff off it. And it was just incredible. It was like, wow, I really felt like we were in a medical facility a lot of the time. Just in terms of the quality of the construction, Peter Murray noted that, he's worked in a lot of hospitals because he's worked for a DHB in the past, and he said the construction of the building was just top quality. They don't own it, by the way. They actually lease this building on a 30-year lease. Because in the federal government of Australia, they don't tend to own any of their buildings. So they're a little bit different than us. This is a scanning digitization station. No, it's just different stuff to what we have, but I just thought I'd take a photo of it. This was their photographic imaging. It's hard to call it anything but a studio. And the photos don't do any justice, but it is really big. It's probably like from here to that wall, and it's higher than this ceiling. And they've just got these amazing kind of, I don't know what these do, but they look cool. They're for reflecting light, I think. Is that what they are? Whatever, yeah. They've just got like all the stuff, which was kind of incredible. They got an old Mac. That was pretty cool. I'd take a photo of that. They rock. Actually, let me just go back to this. They have in there, I think this might be one of them. They've got a Hasselblad, is it Hasselblad? Like really high-end kind of camera gear in there. I'd heard about that, and they've used it in, like NASA used them for photographing space and stuff. So, does anyone know what this is? It's like I thought, man, whatever it is, it's cool. Kongsberg. I wanted to see them make a box, but I don't know how it works. No one explained to me. I should go look on YouTube. But I thought, man, you guys have machines to make boxes. Probably not as good as our boxes, though, eh? Human. Not as intelligent as ours, yeah. But it was incredible. So we've got a room. It's quite a decent sized room just for this little box building. It wasn't being used, so I don't know how busy it was. Then we peered into this cool dark area, this cave, and they turned on the lights, and whoo! They've got like a loading bay where you can close the door with the vehicle inside the loading bay. It was amazing. I thought, you don't have to have it open, and what happens if it rains? That's okay, we just close the doors. It's like, man. And it's so clean. It's really spotless. And they've got this little van which they use to shuttle records around to some of the different sites, and it's a Mercedes. It's like, you have to go to Singapore and get a taxi to see a Mercedes around here. Okay, so then the next day we went to University of Technology Sydney, and this is in the heart of Sydney, in the CBD, so we walked about half an hour from our hotel to get this place. And the main reason we were going to see this was because they have this robotic library retrieval system, and it is for libraries, so what you're seeing is actually pretty good for books, but probably pretty useless for our needs, but it was still really cool. So this is from the area where humans are allowed, and looking into this really cavernous kind of room. It literally is a cavern that was excavated from beneath the university, and it took them 10 months to dig through the sandstone. And it's hard to tell. I'll show you a better picture here, hopefully. Well, this is a tray or a carton of books that goes into that stack, and it's retrieved by a robot, which is really just a mechanical thing that goes and gets it, brings it out. So humans can then go to a particular zone and find the book that's been requested from the electronic system and put it into a little trolley that gets taken to their reading room. And then when books are returned, they get just stuck into one of these little trays. Where the books go, they know what carton or what cart it goes into, and they know what sector, which is kind of one of these slots, but they don't know precisely where it is in there. So humans still have to go through and look for the book. So this is me trying to like lean in but not fall in into the kind of cavern, and it goes very deep. It goes very deep. I can't remember. Can you remember how many pi it was? I wrote it down somewhere, but it was high. Yeah, it was 3 or 4 stories worth, and quite deep. This is what one of those little. It was very mechanical. It was very mechanical. So this thing is, meant to last for 50 years, but it gets serviced monthly. They have people on call to come fix them. They do have problems with it. It's a highly mechanical system. It's just not what it looks like on the side. So it's run by this, I think a German company called Dematic, and they usually use it for manufacturing warehouses. So they've effectively converted it into a book system. This is from down below, so we were allowed to go downstairs, and you can just see that they've carved it out of rock and installed this thing. This is a little robot that then goes up and down and back and forth, and there's just, you can see just rows and rows and rows of it. And it reminds you of The Matrix. I don't know if anyone's seen that film where, people are used as batteries and they're just sort of in there. And it is very, very much like a warehouse. And around the outside of this cavern, they've got areas where you can walk around, so I guess it protects it from the leakage from the ground, because water does come through and then they siphon that off. So it's a very, very, protected area. It was quite funny, then the librarian of the university said, it's this kind of pristine, perfectly clean environment. No, it ain't. I don't think she's been down there for years, because we went down there, it's like, man, this is dirty down here. And you've got machinery that presumably doesn't handle that dirt very well, so I don't know how long that'll last. So then the next day, this was on the Friday, we went to State Records Authority of New South Wales. They've got a really big exhibition at the moment called Captured, which is taking a lot of records and archives around convicts. So there's a sort of story here. They've got a lot of records about people who've come into the care of His or Her Majesty at the time into various correctional facilities, and they're just telling stories about some of the people. Some of them have probably been wrongly imprisoned, some of them would be rightly imprisoned, and there was this little thing here just showed kind of the sentences for various crimes. And I thought it was really interesting, this injuries to rail carriages and telegraphs. So back in the day, this would have been about the 1900s, you would get life imprisonment for, I guess, vandalising, whilst you would, for killing someone or, marrying more than one person at once and doing some other sacrilege, 14 years. It's like, wow, just incredible stuff. But it kind of reminds us of different times. Falsifying official records, that should be life sentence, right? Yeah. And this is just the reading room. I don't think there was anything particularly special about the reading room. It was probably about this size here as well. What I liked is that all the books were nicely lined up. So I thought, wow, they're really orderly books. It's kind of like a library in there. Actually, this is kind of interesting, they showed us some records that they were proud of, and they wanted to show us that they thought we'd be interested in, which was something we didn't see at all at the National Archives of Australia. It was all about, they knew we were there to see the building, but it was kind of interesting, they didn't actually pull anything out. And this is an original architectural plan drawing of the Sydney Opera House, and it was like, whoa! Rob Stevens also came on the trip, and he's an architect by trade, so he was like, wow, this is fantastic. They had a map here. They thought, well, you're from New Zealand, we've got a map of New Zealand. I think they forgot about the rest of the islands. This was by, this is Peter Whitehead looking at it. Janet, who was at the last CARA meeting. She's a big Doctor Who fan. She had a massive Doctor Who poster at her desk. There's a record here they showed of, I think it was an officer of Hobson's, who had taken one of the treaty papers down south, and he had been given a little bit of a daily allowance, but he had been given too much money, and this was the paperwork so that the Crown could recover some of the money that he had. So that was fascinating. So even, that kind of bureaucracy has always existed. This is in one of the digitisation labs, or it's actually not really a lab, it's more like a workshop, sweatshop. It kind of is, and it's probably bigger than this room, I'd say. They had a lot of people there. The picture doesn't do it. This is like half of the room, and it's just chockers with people. There's no natural light coming from here. A lot of these rooms in their archival building are really like bunkers. They're just concrete top, bottom, sides. And they were saying that the reason it was built like that and out of the city was because, I think back in the 70s and 80s when it was built, they were concerned about nuclear war. They were concerned about losing records, so they are built like little bunkers. Oh, and I thought one of the interesting things, some of their rooms they called cells. Again, more criminal stuff. This is one of their massive tabletop scanners, and they said this is about $100,000 for the scanner, so actually not bad given what it's used for. I love that, Mapmaster XXL. Yeah. And then, we were looking at their repository, which was kind of vast because, and I'll show you in a moment why, but it was just huge. This is actually on a mezzanine floor, so this stuff down here is just metal that you walk on top of, and it's hollow, and down below is another floor. So they've got a lot of this sort of mezzanine flooring, and this is probably one of their higher ceiling, floor-to-ceiling stacks. This is kind of more of a newer one, concrete floor. Some places they had nice sort of wooden floor, but they've tried to go much lower and allow it to be easier for humans to walk around and get stuff. Outside, things for disaster recovery. So if they need things, if it gets wet, they can take them in there, make it cold, do things with it. Also, if things have got bugs, pestilence, mould, they can bring it into here and treat it before bringing it into the archives. And, that's a couple of our hosts, but you probably can't quite read it. Venomous snakes observed in this area. And so our host said, we get the Wrigley's around here, the Wrigley's. And I was like, well, what are those? Oh, snakes. Yeah, you're right. So, it's a dangerous place, one of the agents of deterioration. And so Government Records Repository, what they call GRR, is a major part of their business. They are actually a commercial business for many public offices around New South Wales. So a lot of public offices and agencies pay these guys to actually do their records management, which is why they run this huge commercial operation. There's people just going through there all the time, trucks going in and out constantly, and why they've got such a vast repository, much bigger than a normal, archival repository for their size. And then only a few more photos. This is from National Archive of Australia in Chester Hill in Sydney. And actually we spent a lot of time looking at the repository, but they also had a lot of AV stuff in there. Mark Crookson was particularly interested in this, given some work he's been doing recently with his team. This was just like a whole bunch of different tape gear and audio stuff. Kind of older facility, not like their Canberra facility, lots of old compactors. I took this photo just because they were saying, look, different box sizes, they weren't getting a lot of good density in there, so they would have done it differently if they could start from scratch. This is taken in an area where they did not have air conditioning, and man, it was starting to get warm in that room. And they talked about when they had some particularly hot and humid weather a couple of years ago, they had sort of mould growing on the walls, they had water seeping through. So, they have some real problems, and it's a, 48-year-old or 46-year-old facility. Just through that kind of red thing at the end is actually air-conditioned space. And we were like, man, yeah, can we get in there? Because it was a hot day. And this is just some equipment that they're trying to convert into a digitization suite. And this is one of their latest sort of film digitization devices, which looks like a really high-end television, but it's inside when they open it up. It's just a reel-to-reel machine, but there's a little digitisation scanner thing in there, and there's a gentleman who was basically just running World War I films through this, and just going at it. There's just hours of effort and terabytes of data, because I think they're doing it at 4K digitisation. I think that was it. So really my big sort of takeaways was that, wow, we saw a range of stuff there. You can build things and create the right facilities if you really put the effort in, and I guess if you have the money to do it. So they have a different funding scheme over there. As I was saying, it was all leased, so the people that own the facility in Canberra, they paid for it, and they simply lease it to the government for 30 years plus options for another 5 and 5. And it's a different scheme to the way in which we get funding for construction around here. But it's something that we are going to be talking to Treasury about to see what sort of options we might have. Any other big takeaways? It was a fast, intense trip. It was for sure. And we were. You notice I took fewer photos towards the end because I was like, oh, okay, I want to go home now. There's only so much repository I can look at, and so much video gear.
I think the repositories were interesting, but it was also very interesting that they're all clearly changing their services as well.
Yeah.
There's far more going on to it.
Digital.
Online services. And it was interesting to see how they're doing that in different areas.
Yeah.
And also, of course, all those repositories are not necessarily in the centre of town. There are different situations.
Yeah.
They're all on the outskirts of town, so they have to manage their services differently.
Yeah, which is why you need little shuttles to move things around to the reading rooms. Good point. The level of digitisation is kind of quite different. As you saw in New South Wales, it was like a little farm in there of people just, working very intensely. Having said that, I don't think they were any more industrious than, the guys on level 1. So, you guys are heroes doing that. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know if anyone has any questions. I just want to open the floor for any just sort of general questions. I just want to say just thanks to the people that spoke this morning. Again, great to sort of just hear about the different work that people are doing and the things they're really good at. And, like you sort of talked about, we have some ignorance, but I know that we're curious. So ignorance and the curiosity means that, we can learn things, and I think that's a really good place to be. Michael, I was like, whoa, didn't know you did all those kind of amazing things. And I think it's really lovely to call out how, you rely on other colleagues, but we all rely on each other as a team, don't we? So, it's definitely a completely team effort, integrated effort to make things work. And really, again, just to see, some of the work that's happening in the Pacific Islands is heartening, it's sobering, makes us feel like, we're not so bad. We've got some, we do have certain resources, we have some privileges, but, step across the pond and you can see what other people have. Yeah. But any questions about any other things that you may have heard today from Peter or myself or any of the others, or just general questions? Okay, well, I think we're pretty much ready to close. The next meeting's on the 20th December. As you heard from Peter, I'm going to be here for a while. So, hope that's okay. Well, then 20th December, we'll be getting pretty close to Christmas. So hopefully we'll have a more festive Yuletide or holiday kind of theme to that. Who's running the next one? Who's organising that? H&D's organising the next one. Fantastic. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Have a great day and rest of the week. Catch you later.